The moment you've all been waiting for. Monk Changes. And let me tell you guys, there is a lot to unpack here. So much so that even as I was sitting down and playing with these new abilities, my brain began to fry. Granted, I was too excited to sleep for this entire 2-day trip, in spite of my best efforts, but what I'd come to know about Monk over this past expansion flipped some stuff on its head for me. Now, having had a few days to mull over these changes, rewatch footage, and read over skills a bit more carefully, I have a better idea of what they were going for. It's still a bit difficult since we didn't get to play with dummies or level 80 trials, but I'll do my best with what I have now. So, without further ado, let's get started. I'll be breaking this down into 3 parts: what's been changed, what's new, and my speculated rotation. Keep in mind that this was a build from around April 30th, so things are subject to change and my own experience with it was limited. Take everything with a grain of salt here. So for changes, we have the roll skills being updated, Dragon Kick being adjusted for the general damage resistance down removal, boot shine adjustments based on the aforementioned change, Tackle Master being based on charges rather than riddles, Riddles of Fire and Wind being adjusted, and of course, a 4th Greased Lightning stack. The roll skills are pretty straightforward, so I won't spend too much time on these, especially since I'll be going over them in the Samurai video as well. Abilities like Diversion and Goad are gone because tank changes have made aggro a non-issue, and TP is gone completely. Yeah, weapon skills don't cost anything, so get ready to AoE spam to your heart's content. The only other major change here is the True North, which has had its cooldown reduced to 45 seconds and is now a charged ability, maxing out at 2 stacks. This means that even if your group swears by stack strats, you'll have a lot more leeway to forego positionals to work with your party. Mechanics like Akmorn and Ice Floors from Midgard's Armor will be more forgiving now as well. I'm really happy about this because melee felt very punished in Alphascape Savage, and this should help alleviate a lot of it without trivializing the need for positionals all around. I'd say it's a pretty good compromise. So, Dragon Kick no longer gives the blunt resistance down, but rather gives the buff Leaden Fist when used in Oppo Oppo form. Leaden Fist is then used to buff Boot Shine from 190 potency to 290. The critical damage from the rear still remains unchanged for Boot Shine, so we still get our tasty crits. Before you guys freak out though, they made sure to establish that combat calculations in general will be adjusted overall, so they will account for things like blunt resistance down being removed. I think it's a pretty senseless thing to think a developer would miss something like that, but people like to panic over nothing, so I thought I'd make a mention of it. Now then, for all intents and purposes, Tackle Mastery is no more. It's still technically a trait, but all it does is allow Shoulder Tackle to become a charged ability with 2 stacks like they've shown in the live letter presentation. Oh wow, that means Riddle of Wind is going to be crazy. No, it won't. At least not how you're thinking. Riddle of Wind still exists much in the same way Tackle Mastery does, as a trait. Now, however, instead of adding a stack of Greased Lightning, it adds a stack of Greased Lightning. I mean, the 4th stack of Greased Lightning. Yeah, the only way to get to Greased Lightning 4 is to get to level 76 and be in Fists of Wind. This made things very confusing for me up front for reasons I'll get into in just a second. Now you may be thinking, well then what about Riddle of Fire? It's still here and does all the same stuff, but it no longer puts you into Fists of Fire. You may have noticed this during the job action trailer. That means you can be in Fists of Wind, have your 4th stack of Greased Lightning, and still use Riddle of Fire. It will still fall off if you try to change stances while under its effect though. Before I elaborate into this anymore though, I want to get into what's new because it's important to tie everything together. For new stuff, Fist of Fire got a trait bonus, Deep Meditation got a trait bonus, of course the Riddles of Wind trait, the skill Anatman, which is awesome, the weapon skill 4-point Fury, which completes our AoE rotation, the weapon skill 6-sided Star, and finally a ranged attack for Chakra! Going in order, Fist of Fire now grants 10% damage up instead of 5, so in terms of attack power, having 3 stacks of Greased Lightning in Fist of Fire versus 4 stacks in Fist of Wind will be even. The only discrepancy here is the skill speed gained from Greased Lightning 4. Deep Meditation now has a 70% chance to grant a Chakra upon a critical hit with a weapon skill from 50% at level 74. Pretty straightforward there. Now, Anatman is a very interesting ability. In spite of its namesake, it just warms my soul. It not only stops Greased Lightning from decreasing for up to 30 seconds, but increases your stacks at about 1 per 3 seconds. The first added stack seems to be somewhere between 1 and 2 seconds after activation, but I can't confirm yet why that is. You aren't able to build stacks unless you already have one though, so you're not going to be able to start fights with Greased Lightning 4 or anything like that. Also, it is a channel, so anything that would interrupt it will also stop the ability and your Greased Lightning will start decreasing again. I feel that's fairly obvious, but I can't help but feel that at least one stickler in the comments was waiting to point that out. The use of this skill may be interesting depending on DPS calculations. Even though you're not doing damage during the channel, you are gaining Greased Lightning stacks at only a slightly slower pace than if you were using Perfect Balance. We'll have to wait for the Theory Crafters to get their hands on it to be able to tell if this is viable, say, in a Tornado Kick opener, or if it's strictly for fight downtime. Riddle of Earth has remained unchanged, so we get a lot of freedom with what we have to choose from. Onto the weapon skills, the first one I wanted to go over is 4-Point Fury. This one will be going between Armor the Destroyer and Rockbreaker in that rotation, with the added effect of prolonging the Twin Snakes buff by 10 seconds. It doesn't give the Twin Snakes buff, but the fact that we only have to apply it once and then go to town on our AoE rotation now is pretty big. That on top of the fact that TP nor MP is required for weapon skills, there's nothing stopping us from sticking strictly to this rotation on trash pulls. Now I know this is breaking the order of things, but I feel there's no better time to get to our new chakra ability, Enlightenment. This is a line AoE counterpart to Forbidden Chakra. Get 5 stacks of chakra and let her rip. It's on the global cooldown too, so it can be spammed for as long as you have chakra to spend on it. With the new Deep Meditation 2 trait, Monk is just going to shred through dungeon mobs, even more so than it already does. The range on it isn't anything crazy, so it still loses out to Dragoon's Piercing Talon and other abilities like that for instances where you'll have to move away from the boss, but it's something, and I'm more than happy to take it. To wrap up this section is the level 80 weapon skill, Six-Sided Star. This is a strange one. It has more potency than Tornado Kick, maxes out your Greased Lightning timer, and only has roughly a 5-second cooldown without factoring in skill speed. It's also important to note that, even though it affects Greased Lightning timing, it will not change or cancel your form buff. The only caveat is that, after using it, every other weapon skill is given that same cooldown. It slows things down just about as much as you think it does. I can only imagine they heard people say, hey, now we can double weave our OGCDs in Riddle of Fire, and thought, well, why not use all your OGCDs between a single weapon skill? This is one that certainly does not seem optimal to use more than once or twice in a burst phase, nor do I quite understand the reasoning behind refreshing the Greased Lightning timing just yet. My speculation is that, 1, it goes near the beginning of your burst phase in Riddle of Fire to allow you to blow through all of your OGCDs at once, then again at the end of your Riddle of Fire window before Tornado Kick, if that's still a viable opener option. Or 2, it's a way to keep your stacks when returning to a boss without having to wait on Form Shift for a buffed Snap Punch or Demolish. Oh my goodness, I think we made it through. Honestly, the overall playstyle of Monk isn't going to be changed too much since the rotation is the same, and so are the general mechanics. The way they're applied to Monk's kit, as well as the implications for how to use them situationally, is a substantial change though. So now that we've gotten to the end of the changes, I'm going to do my best to bring all this together in how I think Monk will be playing. The first thing I want to touch on again is the comparison of Greased Lightning 4 in Fist of Wind and Greased Lightning 3 in Fist of Fire. Like I said before, the damage boost is the same, 40% from Greased Lightning 4 and 30% from Greased Lightning 3 with the 10% from Fist of Fire. The point where Fist of Wind actually seems more optimal is the fact that you get more skill speed while in Greased Lightning 4, which will be an overall DPS increase over Fist of Fire. That's only when you get to Greased Lightning 4 though. Because of this, I think that Fist of Fire will be the optimal stance to start in, while Fist of Wind will be your stance for the majority of combat. This wouldn't be the case if Riddle of Fire forced you into Fist of Fire, but since it can be applied regardless of your stance, there's little reason at the moment to stay in Fist of Fire beyond your starting damage. One possible opener I can see with this skill speed will be the usual Fist of Fire, Form Shift into Demolish, Perfect Balance, Snap Punch, Dragon Kick, Twin Snakes, Fist of Wind, Snap Punch. Then, Riddle of Fire and Brotherhood into Six-Sided Star, OGCD spam, Bootshine rotation into Demolish, Dragon Kick into Snap Punch, Bootshine, Six-Sided Star, Tornado Kick, True Strike, Snap Punch, and use a Knotmon to build your stacks again. If you have higher skill speed, you can get that True Strike before the last Six-Sided Star and Tornado Kick, or if you delay Riddle of Fire until after the first Six-Sided Star. It honestly doesn't seem too optimal since you'll be standing still for about 6 to 9 seconds, but it's a faster way of gaining your stacks than using the rotation. 2 buff Six-Sided Stars and a Tornado Kick in that burst window is nothing to shake your fist at though. Still, I'll leave it to people who are better at math than me to confirm or deny that. I am in no way saying that this is the way it will be. I'm simply formulating this option with the information I have with the lack of training dummy time, level 80 dungeon time, and mathematical ability. There's a good chance I'm still overlooking things that fresh eyes out there will pick up on, so like I said at the beginning, take this with a grain of salt. But with that, we finished just about everything I can think of regarding the adjustments made to Monk in Shadowbringers. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Be sure to check out the other videos regarding the other jobs I tried out if you're interested. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and take care.